All right, welcome to Frontline, 6 o'clock here on the East Coast. We begin with a diplomatic test for the Middle East. President Trump hosted Lebanon's president at the White House today, focusing on regional security, disarming Hezbollah, and rebuilding a country devastated by war and economic collapse. Could this actually be the start of yet another alliance Trump has created? Plus, the thing they say never happens just happened again. New Jersey's Democrat governor, Mickey Sherrill, says over 6,000 non-U.S. citizens were registered to vote by the state's DMV after what they're calling a software error in 2023 and 2024. Like, how many local elections could have been corrupted over a 6,000-person margin? Remember when that French dude was convicted after illegally casting a ballot in the 2022 federal midterms because he just thought he was allowed to vote since, hey, I was automatically registered by the DMV when I got my driver's license. Yeah, about that. And follow the money. The Trump administration says it has tracked down the Ayatollah's money man, who is preparing to expose more than $100 million in properties allegedly linked to Iran's supreme leader around the world. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent saying the move is part of a broader effort to disrupt the regime's financial networks and cut off the cash that helps fund its operations. That would be nice. But first, I don't want to give checks to dead people. Do you want to give checks to dead people? No, I don't think so. Let's do the Griff Report. Let's do this. Okay. If a thing is not happening, then why does it keep happening? So today, Dr. Oz and RFK, who should have been wearing capes at this point, honestly, laid out another $1 billion of money that they're cutting off because they have reason to believe it's going to fraud.
Today, we are deferring over $1 billion in federal Medicaid dollars, $1 billion to Minnesota and California until they can substantiate their claims from this past quarter of audits.
$1 billion. That's Joe Biden. He just let it go out the door to whoever, whenever, whatever. No concern. RFK, explain this.
The Biden administration nearly broke that high-trust society. They looked the other way while fraud, waste, and abuse exploded, and they incentivized fraud, waste, and abuse in all 50 states. They held no one accountable. They violated the social contract that makes this country strong and that makes our democracy function.
Forget social contracts. I never want to hear another lib ever say they care about the little guy ever again, because all the Democrats, they're freaking out like, oh, you can't take this. Yes, you can take all this money away. You want to know why? Here's why. The average household in America pays $13,890 a year in federal taxes. That means to equate just the fraud they stopped today, you would need to confiscate 100% of the tax revenue from 72,000 households to cover that nut. That means the money from 72, that's 40 times the houses you see on your screen. You'd have to confiscate all their money to give it to people that were stealing it. But under the Biden administration, the Democrats didn't even care. Even further, California and Minnesota are actively preventing the Trump administration from finding more of it.
We are calling on two states, because this is a partnership. We need states involved. But there are two states in particular today that we have concerns about, California and Minnesota. We want them to come alongside us, federal partners, to ensure that Medicaid dollars go to the services that are required by real people with real problems getting real care.
I would love to see Tim Walz or Gavin Newsom in his hair gel go knock on every single one of those 72,000 households. Look those people in the eye when they come to the door after working a 12-hour shift at God knows where. Say, hi, I know you skip eating out dinner with your family at night. You cut your vacation short in this economy to cover your bills. But I just want you to know that we need you to keep paying your tax bill. In fact, we're going to raise your taxes, because that's what Democrats always do. We're going to raise your taxes and take more of your money away from you so we can keep paying someone fraudulently for caring for someone who's already dead. You look 72,000 blue-collar families in the eye, and you tell them that Gavin Newsom needs your money to send some like illegal trans Somali or dead person. So you see how they react. They're going to shoot you on sight.
The outrage, the anger that America feels crosses party lines on this issue. It's very, very difficult for anyone on any part of the political spectrum to think it makes sense to throw money away.
Yeah, that's the litmus test for me or on anything taxpayer funded. You look a family making cuts to their own household in the eye, and you tell them that they need to keep paying because we need to take your money so we can study, I don't know, shrimp running on treadmills. And if you think they wouldn't like that, then maybe you shouldn't spend money on that. This is why I love what these guys are doing.
In coordination with HHS, obviously, OIG, the DOJ, the White House Anti-Fraud Task Force, and most importantly, in this case, the states, we have an ability to prevent $100 billion of waste from going out the door.
Yes. And this is just scratching the surface. Remember that 93%, look at this pie chart right here. 93% of LA County hospice facilities had one or more flags of fraud. Only 7% were above board. And according to a CBS investigation, in LA County, 18,000 hospice centers, okay, 500 inside a 3-mile radius, 137 on the same street, and as you can see right here, 89 hospice in-home end-of-life care in a single building in LA. There just aren't that many people to die there, let alone in the age bracket to need end-of-life care. But now we find out that California is still growing in-home programs.
California's spending in these in-home programs went up 24%. The rest of the country's average is about 12%. So California increased spending at twice the rate of the average of the rest of the entire nation.
Because they can, because nobody's looking into it. Either the entire state is on government care or there is fraud because the math just ain't mathin'. And speaking about ain't mathin', Scott Bessent is actually using the IRS for the first time in my lifetime to help the average American rather than terrorize them because taxation is theft. They are actually using the IRS to stop payments to dead people. I mean, this is insane. Look at this. Why we have to do this, I don't know. But here we are. But we found out for the first launch of this audit that there was over $100 million in wrongful payments. The IRS is now auditing, listen to this, $2.7 trillion worth of payments. That is half of the federal tax revenue being audited, and we're going to find out just how much is being given to programs and people that it shouldn't be. I'm honestly concerned that the numbers aren't going to start a civil war at this point, because apparently estimates are already coming back that there's $500 billion in improper payments going out the door every year. I'm like, come on, man. I have to save a gas receipt for 7 years or I can't write it off on my business taxes. But we can just start shelling out 2% of our GDP to like jagaloons filing false reports to get free money. By the way, many of which are driving around in luxury cars in Minnesota while you and I are driving 5- and 10-year-old cars so we can put our kids through college. That apparently also has a ton of fraud in the student loan process too. You mad? You have every right to be. We dump tea in the harbor for a lot less. So let's hear it from the man himself, administrator for the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, who's tackling these fraudsters head on. Dr. Mehmet Oz, sir, insane what you guys keep uncovering that the Democrats say never happens.
Carl, as you just saw, there's a lot of animation in the administration. It's an all-of-government approach. The vice president, who was tasked by the president to go out there and make sure that we have a anti-fraud task force that works and pulls all the levers that are possible to pull to make sure we stop these bad guys from taking advantage of our most vulnerable, is doing just that. So we've got the Department of Justice and FBI. We've got Treasury doing forensic accounting. But specifically at Health and Human Services, we are now delegating the ability to take action to CMS, and so we can move in even more quickly. And we're doing something that's really important. We're not letting the money leave the building. And that focus is critical because we can stop tens of billions of dollars from going out the door. I mean, we are stopping more money from leaving this building that I'm in right now than is the GDP of many countries in the world, because we're taking proactive steps to not let the fraudsters get at this money. But there's also times when we got to go out there and make sure the states realize that an all-government approach includes them. They've got to help. So in particular today, we are deferring payments to Minnesota and California of $1 billion.
That's
now the reason
crazy.
for that because we're seeing evidence of fraud just looking at the raw numbers that are too great to explain without asking a few additional questions. Let's take California as an example. The rate of growth for in-home services, which are things that you would do for your family for free normally, like, carrying the groceries upstairs. The rate of growth of those services in California is twice that of the rest of the national average. So if every other state is half of California, we got to ask the question. Like, it's our job. What is going on in California? If you can't explain it, we're not going to pay you.
Well, and that's the other thing too. Is like I think like you had said in a month or so ago that like 1/3 of all hospice was coming out of L.A. County. But there's another thing too. This is like you always say everybody is like, hey, look, dead people are receiving benefits. They're like, give us a specific example. Today, you showed that there is a dead person on the rolls for payment. Roll this.
As an example of a documentation gap is charging us for care you provided to a deceased person.
Yeah, a deceased person. They always want specifics. Well, here you go. How many did they need?
Well, it's not just how many examples, but how many people were dead they got paid for. We're going to stop about $5 million of payments to California because of the dead people that they were paying for. Again, why are we spending for healthcare expenses in California on people who have already passed away? It's, same in Minnesota. A couple $1 million also in Minnesota that we're going to pull back because they're charging us for people who are already deceased. These are just examples of how messed up their billing systems are. I'm not saying all the fraud is dead people. I'm saying the fact that you have, in just these two examples, $8 million going to pay for dead people's health care defies belief. Like, how could your accounting work that poorly that we would be forced to call you out on that? But those are the small numbers. Carl, look at what's going on in California with the undocumented immigrants. People aren't registered to be in America and get health care services.
Illegals,
that federal tax dollars are going to illegal. So we have now taken action stopping another $200+ million just this quarter. We've now passed $2 billion that we have withheld from California just for illegal immigrants that they were charging us for, undocumented individuals. They've already paid us back $1 billion of it. So they're not even arguing with it. They're giving us the money back. But if you live in California, you should be upset because if we're getting federal dollars repaid to us because we were falsely billed for illegals living in California, that means you're paying for it in California. You should be up in arms.
Yeah, but the other thing too is Democrats are refusing to cooperate with you guys. I don't understand. You've got California, you've got all these blue states, New York and whatever. They're refusing to cooperate to audit any type of fraud until you catch them and they're like, oh, yeah, it caught us anyway. Like, who's going to jail over that? That's what we want to know. The average American household pays, what, $20,000 in taxes? How many hundreds of thousands of households are footing the bill that's going to, like, Mogadishu?
Yeah, shockingly large amounts. And the question we should be asking ourselves is what kind of a human being steals from the poor, steals from our most vulnerable? But Carl, I need to answer your question very directly. You should be, and everyone is now because you asked the question, thinking, why would a governor allow fraud? And I'm going to tell you straight up, it's not a flaw for a lot of governors. It's actually a feature. In New York State, it's called Medicaiding it. Literally transferring a state expense to the federal government. Now, let's be crisp about the meaning of this. If you're the governor of California or New York or another state that thinks this is okay, and you could get your unemployed individuals into a jobs program for Medicaid by, let's say, paying them to carry groceries upstairs for their family. Again, something you should do for free. We're going to pay you for Medicaid dollars. That means you have less unemployed people. And here's the part that really bothers me, and we just talked about this last week in California. They are unionizing these employees. People who are being paid by the federal government are getting unionized by state unions. And those unions are using those tax dollars to fund politicals in those states. That, to me, is political patronage. That has to stop. We just uncovered that. And then there was a great report last week that was talking about the specific numbers. But we're talking about a massive transfer of wealth to unions who are going to fund the party they like, which happens to be the party that's willing to tolerate this fraud.
This is the type of stuff that makes people want to dump tea in the harbor. But Dr. Oz, you're one of the good ones, sir, and I want to eat popcorn when you perp walk these people. So thank you.
All right, thank you.
All right, coming up, if you ever wonder why conservatives and liberals are so different, ask them what America means to them. Their answers will tell you everything you need to know. My thoughts on that and what parties prioritize later in the show. But first, the fight to protect our privacy continues. One congressman set out to stop federal agencies and general bureaucrats from obtaining flock surveillance data without a warrant. The man fighting behind that garbage, Texas Congressman Keith Self, going to join me live next.
This was America in 1980, held in contempt by foreign nations. Across the world, people were losing their freedoms. So many countries thought America had seen its day, but we knew better. So we stopped complaining together and started working together. Today, America is strong again. We're looking to the future with confidence and pride. America's best days and democracy's best days lie ahead.
From senior to childcare to pets and more, the new Care.com makes it easier than ever to find the care you need. And you don't have to hire just anyone. You can find a background-checked caregiver who's the right fit for you. Join now and find care at Care.com.
Doctors say having a medical emergency kit is like having an urgent care and pharmacy at home. Let me bring in Dr. McCullough to explain more.
Most people know when they're getting sick, but waiting to see a doctor is often too late.
So the key is having medicines before you need them.
Yes, and it includes doctor-prescribed medicines to treat common and serious issues like generic Z-Pak, amoxicillin, antibiotics, antivirals for flu, pneumonia, strep, ear and sinus infections, UTIs, and more.
So it is like having an urgent care at home.
Exactly. No waiting, no pharmacy, no copays. You feel better faster and avoid serious complications and hospitalizations.
How do you know what to take?
Just match your symptoms to the doctor-written guide or schedule a quick telehealth call.
Great advice. I understand ordering is fast online, and we've put the website and $45 off code on the screen. Thank you, doctor.
Visit urgentcarekit.com/news, promo code news.
Hey, I'm Dr. Drupinski. I've been looking at the aging process for a long time. Fatty 15 actually slows it down. Fatty 15 comes out of Navy dolphin research. Without the C15, our cells become fragile and age and oxidize. This pushes that back. That's why I take Fatty 15.
All right, so the government thinks it can spy on us under the guise of safety all the time. Not on my watch. Allow me to introduce you to Flock Safety. You may have heard about this trash. A specialized security system that uses artificial intelligence, which I hate, to automatically read license plates and track vehicles in real time using the technology to instantly identify the vehicle's make, model, color, and license plate number, which means you. That data is then sent to a cloud base, who knows securing that, maybe in China, where police departments can search this network to find cars connected to, allegedly, active investigations. They're also heavily used by private businesses and neighborhood owners and associations and stuff like that. But a lot of times it's actually being used incorrectly, and innocent people are affected by this. And Americans are waking up to what's really going on here. There's some major privacy concerns and potentially unauthorized data sharing that come out of this system, with federal agencies obtaining and even using Flock surveillance data without a warrant. Now, the Supreme Court did just recently rule that you can't just ping someone's phone. That's a warrantless search. Because of these agencies, they don't have to they don't have unilateral control over whatever they want to do, okay? We have the Fourth Amendment. You can't just go searching people and their stuff. This decision applies to mass policing, too. Speed cameras, red light cameras. People are literally cutting these things down. Now, here at Newsmax, we don't encourage lawlessness. But I understand the sentiment and also kind of enjoy it. Some cities are getting rid of these Flock cameras to protect their people after massive backlash, too. Even the Flock Safety CEO, Garrett Langley, admitted that the amount of surveillance was sickening.
Your company has expanded pretty rapidly. How many cities are you in right now?
Yeah, we're just in north of 6,000 cities, which generally speaking is most of the country.
6,000 cities.
Yeah.
That's rapid expansion.
It's pretty nauseating. I mean, I'm on the road pretty much every day of the week.
Yeah, it should be zero. And now he's calling organizations against his security systems terrorists. Watch this.
And then unfortunately, there's terroristic organizations like DFLOC, whose primary motivation is chaos. They are closer to Antifa than they are anything else.
Look, this clip was immediately fact-checked on X, saying that DFLOC is an open-source project mapping license plate readers to highlight privacy risks from surveillance technology, not a terrorist organization. And don't worry, he later apologized for labeling that, saying it was a mistake. I think they should sue the pants off of this guy, but it's like rules for thee, but not you. I can surveil you, but you. These kids are trying to find out where Flock cameras are headquartered, right? or Flock Safety is headquartered. And they were told they can't know and to, quote, get the camera out of my face from the people pushing mass surveillance on you and I. See, when our founding fathers wrote the First Amendment, the Fourth Amendment, all this stuff, when the First Amendment, social media wasn't invented when they wrote it. The Fourth Amendment, we didn't have satellites that could tell the color of your eye from space. What happens when we have technology that can just see through walls in the flock cameras? Will that not be a warrantless search and seizure? As far as I'm concerned, the government works for us. If you're going to surveil me, I want cameras in every one of your government offices, local, state, federal, everything, congressional offices. I want one in the White House. I want a live stream of what you do all day in my kid's school, but I won't hold my breath for that. Texas Congressman Keith Self, who just introduced legislation to protect we the people from this crazy warrantless searching. Sir, I'm glad you did this.
Thank you, Carl. It was very necessary because here's the central point. Just because technology advances, you don't give up. American citizens do not give up their right to privacy. That's the central idea of this bill, the Privacy Act that I have filed, that says federal agencies cannot get flock data without a warrant. It's the same fight we had for FISA, Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. Get a warrant if you want to violate Americans' privacy. Get a warrant from a judge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, makes total sense for me, especially in places like California. They're just suspending people's license whether they know they're driving or not. But I want to get to something else. Pete Hegseth up on the Hill today. All right, this is a very interesting. He's now asking for almost $100 billion more for this Iran conflict. I'm a proponent of him finishing the job. I didn't want to go in the first place, but now you got to finish it. However, you're now in a position as the Pentagon. You have to declare war. It's been longer than 60 days. You want $100 billion more. Don't you think that this should be a congressional act of war at this point?
Well, certainly Congress has a say in this because they're asking for those dollars to come out of the congressional budget.
Yes.
So, yes, we can ask for any sort of information to include that, and we should be doing that. That's the congressional oversight that we have been charged with. And frankly, we're not having any pay-fors for this $100 billion. Mm-hmm. We need to decide how we're going to pay for this as well. Look, our grandchildren, they're already shouldering something like $40 trillion in debt. So let's get the pay-fors. Let's take a less noble program and pay for a more noble program. So yes, congressional oversight is very necessary, and we are coming to the point. If we go full-scale war against Iran, which it looks like we will, then we're going to need more of a determination by the U.S. Congress.
Yeah. Look, I mean, it is what it is. Every president going back 40 years has said we got to deal with Iran. Trump's the first guy to actually do it, so you got to applaud him there. Representative Keith Self, we appreciate it very much, sir.
Thank you.
All right, coming up, a major win for gun rights. A federal appeals court just absolutely wrecked New Jersey's AR-15 ban. What the landmark ruling could mean for the Second Amendment. We got 2A Tuesday next.
The press won't report the real story.
The American people are actually very smart.
Ridiculous statements.
These guys are just plain weird.
Actual scandals.
Even the immunity decision. I mean, that decision was so misreported.
That's my job, and I aim to do it every night.
The human brain is truly incredible. It's a complex network of 100 billion neurons that create cognitive functions surpassing that of supercomputers. Our brain controls our thoughts, our emotions, and our movements. Prevagen is powered by apoaquarin, originally discovered in jellyfish, and is designed specifically for the brain to help keep it amazing, so that we can continue to live our best life. Try Prevagen for your brain today.
You can join the Tunnel to Towers mission to do good by donating your car to today's veterans. Your car donation will help Gold Star families, as well as injured veterans, our first responders, and our homeless veterans. Donating your car is quick and simple. Any car is accepted, and we will pick up the car for free. Simply call 844-BRAVES.
By donating your car, you can make a real difference. You can do good.
Almost half of women runners say safety is their biggest concern. Majority of us have to constantly change routes, start times.
Instead of thinking of my pace, We worry about being followed, unwanted attention, and stuff that is simply scary.
Imagine this banana was a less lethal device, capable of incapacitating an attacker, letting you get to safety. At Byrna, we don't sell bananas. Go to Byrna.com to find how you can always safely make it to the finish line.
Now, tirzepatide for weight management is available in a dissolvable tablet. It's not the injection and doesn't offer the same strength or clinical evidence as the injectable form, and results will differ from the injection. But for patients who don't want shots, this tablet option is worth exploring, understanding results will differ from the injection. Tirzepatide tablets are a prescription that starts with a telehealth evaluation by a licensed physician who reviews your health history. And if it's right for you, they prescribe it. This might be worth a conversation.
My name is Whitney Allen, and I'm a widow. My husband, Ryan, died. We never thought in a million years we'd have to use life insurance. With Ethos, it's so fast and easy. Get a quote in seconds, apply in minutes, and get same-day coverage.
Check your price today at ethos.com.
Every day across the globe, big business agendas go unseen by investors. Things that go against your core values and beliefs. It's time to know your investments. Abortion, alternative lifestyles, gender and identity confusion. If you believe in protecting marriage and life, children, innocence, guarding masculinity, restoring families, defending religious liberty, invest with your values. Before investing, carefully consider the fund's investment objectives, risks, charges, and expenses of the investment company. This and other important information can be found in the fund's prospectus. To obtain a copy, visit timothyplan.com or call 800-846-7526. Read each prospectus carefully before investing. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal.
Okay, it's 2A Tuesday. Let's do some gun stuff. A massive, massive win for the Second Amendment. It is awesome. A federal appeals court has struck down New Jersey's ban on what they call assault weapons and its limit on magazine capacity, ruling the restrictions violate the Constitution, because this was a sweeping decision in the full Third Circuit Court of Appeals that ruled that the state cannot ban an entire class of semi-automatic rifles that are commonly owned by law-abiding Americans for lawful purposes. The court expanded a lower court's ruling beyond the AR-15, declaring the New Jersey ban completely unconstitutional as it applies to the broader class of semi-automatic rifles, which also strikes down a 10-round magazine limit. Now, the landmark decision, expected to factor in bigly in the Supreme Court taking up the exact same case next session in Grant v. Lamont. Host of Bearing Arms Cam and Company podcast, Cam Edwards, and a Second Amendment columnist at Breitbart News, AWR Hawkins. Cam, you and I have been complaining about 1160 out of Connecticut and the AR ban, and they just overturned it in the state right next to mine.
I know, and I think about a year from now, maybe a little bit less, Carl, we're going to be talking about Connecticut's ban on so-called assault weapons going away as well. As you say, this was a huge decision, authored, by the way, by a Joe Biden appointee. So, this was, I know the gun control activists have been talking about, Republican extremism. Listen, this was a judge who got it. She actually understood what the Supreme Court has said about the Second Amendment. And if you do that, it's pretty clear, right, that arms that are in common use for lawful purposes, like self-defense, but not necessarily limited to self-defense, those arms are protected by the Second Amendment, and that's exactly what the majority of the Third Circuit found.
Well, right, too. And AWR, the other thing is, how do you not read this? It's like, if I live in Connecticut, I fall under 1160, which 2013, they basically said, no more AR-15s. You cannot buy them. You got to register them. You got to do this stuff. High-capacity or normal capacity magazines, I should say. And how is that not infringing on my right? If I own something legally and I now have to march into a government building to register it to keep it, how is that not infringing?
No, well, it is infringing. But like Cam hinted, I think this Third Circuit ruling came in part because this judge thought things through. All these judges thought things through. But I also think it came through because they know what's coming. And in about a year from now, assault weapons bans around the country are going to be struck down, including the one you're talking about in Connecticut. Mm-hmm. The writing is on the wall. I've been waiting for this. And I'm going to store up popcorn and all kinds of sodas and party options. And we're going to have a blast the day this ruling comes down.
Literally. But Cam, the other thing is, and these politicians will always do stupid stuff like this until the day they are bounced out of office, unless there's consequences. And I look at this and I say, I want to file lawsuits. I want criminal charges for any state legislature in Connecticut who voted for the 1160 bill to take away my guns for 13 years by the time this gets overturned, by the way. 13 years. I want them strung up on conspiracy against rights, deprivation of rights, because they took an oath to support and uphold the Constitution. In the Constitution state of Connecticut, Article 1, Section 2, Section 15 of the Connecticut Constitution, Second Amendment, they broke all that, and I want them to go to jail.
Well, Carl, I got some bad news for you. I don't think we're going to see criminal charges. I don't think these lawmakers are going to go to jail. I know. You know, because listen, they use that excuse about, well, the Supreme Court hasn't said we can't do this, so of course we're going to do it, right? If they had any respect at all for the Constitution, you would err on the side of the Constitution. You would say, we don't want to risk infringing on anyone's rights. But the Democrats who vote for these bills, they're going to do it until they get called out. They're going to do it until they get slapped down. And that's why it's so important that the Supreme Court deliver a very strong opinion in these cases so that we don't see lawmakers in Connecticut turn around and say, all right, well, if we can't ban these guns, Carl, we can charge you $5,000 for you to own one, because that's what's coming next.
Yeah. No, you're 100%. Don't give them any ideas, Cam, but they're already ahead of you on that one, I think. But AWR, there has to be a legal mechanism. Like, you swore to uphold the Constitution. The Supreme Court just said that you didn't do that. There has to be a legal mechanism to make their life suck after this.
Oh, I agree. But I will tell you this. I think in Tennessee, in Arizona, in a few other states where there has been a pushback where lawmakers who disarm law-abiding citizens would face charges if those citizens are harmed in places they could otherwise be armed for self-defense. There's always talk of a degree of immunity for office holders. And I think that's important because these are the same people enjoying that immunity who cry their little eyeballs out claiming the AR makers are immune because of the Protection of Lawful Commerce and Arms Act. They're the same people crying their eyes out because ICE and the police are on the streets trying to keep us safe, and they have a degree of immunity when they operate within the framework designed for them. So nothing is coherent here, but I'm with Cam again, and I'm with you, Carl. Once the Supreme Court drops the hammer, they need to drop it hard enough it shatters everything it hits. Mm-hmm. And then let the reverberations do their part, and let's enjoy freedom again.
Yeah, like some Thor-level stuff here, because I'm so done with these libs, because they're all protected by 30-round magazines. Why can't my family? Cam, AWR, pleasure as always.
Thanks, Carl.
All right, coming up, must be a slow news day over at the Atlantic. They tapped a military fitness expert that's unnamed to criticize Pete Hegseth's pull-up form. And how many workout videos did we see of Lloyd Austin? That's right, about zero. Got that in Culture Clash next.
It's me, Ricky. You know me. You grew up with me. I'm 56 and a half years of age. I am using this right here, Fatty 15, to get me to feel and look the best I've ever felt at my age. The C15 nutrient in Fatty 15 has been known to strengthen our cells and slow the aging process at a cellular level. And it is a game changer for your overall vitality. I urge you to try Fatty 15. Give your cells what they need and give yourself a chance with more time.
Attention! Do you owe money to the IRS? If you owe $10,000 or more, you must hear this message, because new Trump-era tax policy changes are providing relief to the American taxpayer. IRS policy changes in 2025 and 2026 have created new ways to resolve debt. Tax Relief Helpers knows exactly how to navigate them and could help you save thousands. Just call 800-357-9528 to protect your assets, home, and retirement.
I owed $87,000 in taxes. Tax Relief Helpers got the amount I owed down to just $3,500. I saved $83,500.
I got behind on my taxes and I owed $48,000. I called, and after they told me about the changes at the IRS, they got my bill fully removed.
We save Americans millions of dollars in tax debt every year, and we can help you. Call right now to take advantage of the latest Trump-era tax deductions to protect your assets, home, and retirement from the IRS. The call and consults are absolutely free. Call 800-357-9528. That's 800-357-9528. Attention! Do you owe money to the IRS? If you owe $10,000 or more, you must hear this message because new Trump-era tax policy changes are providing relief to the American taxpayer. IRS policy changes in 2025 and 2026 have created new ways to resolve debt. Tax Relief Helpers knows exactly how to navigate them and could help you save thousands. Just call 800-357-9528 to protect your assets, home, and retirement.
I owed $87,000 in taxes. Tax Relief Helpers got the amount I owed down to just $3,500. I saved $83,500.
I got behind on my taxes and I owed $48,000. I called, and after they told me about the changes at the IRS, they got my bill fully removed.
We save Americans millions of dollars in tax debt every year, and we can help you. Call right now to take advantage of the latest Trump-era tax deductions to protect your assets, home, and retirement from the IRS. The call and consult are absolutely free. Call 800-357-9528. That's 800-357-9528.
At Ancestry, we believe every question about the past is a spark. And when curiosity strikes about the everyday lives of your family, we're here with answers only your ancestors can provide. How is your family woven into 250 years of U.S. history? Find out now at Ancestry.
The next thing that I heard was you have to have surgery immediately or you have 4 months to live.
Our world changed that day.
Every 15 seconds in America, someone like Jay hears the words, "You have cancer." But your monthly gift helps fund the cancer research that saves people's lives. Donate today, and we'll send you this free t-shirt. Cancer won't wait, and neither can we. Donate today.
Just when you think the left can't embarrass themselves anymore, The Atlantic puts out this think piece. Pete Hegseth, you call that a pull-up? Military fitness experts say the Secretary of Defense fails on form. Well, it's a Secretary of War. I'm sorry, is there no other news going on? Like, this is what they're doing over at The Atlantic? Let's see what the military fitness experts had to say. I asked Maureen LeBoeuf what she made of the Pete and Bobby challenge video. LeBoeuf, a retired brigadier general, okay, and the first and only woman to head the physical education department at West Point, she said that nothing she saw from the defense secretary, war secretary, in that video would have counted if she had been the grader, and she has graded thousands of such tests. I'm sorry, lady. How many people have you shot in war? War never has perfect form. I'd like to see you do those pull-ups yourself, Marine. And now let's do Lloyd Austin in his N95 mask with his face shield on top of it. How many pull-ups did that guy do? 0. He did not show up to work because he didn't tell anybody he was going under anesthesia. Newsmax contributor Kay Smythe and host of Tony Katz Today, Tony Katz himself. Kay, you know what? When I go to war, the most important thing is the guy saving my rear end can do a perfect pull-up.
I mean, again, I think you hit the nail on the head when you said just hard-hitting stuff from The Atlantic. How bored must that editorial team be that this was even approved? I mean, even just like the headline, never in a million years, never in all my years of journalism have I seen something so pointlessly monotonous, just baseline propaganda. Who cares? Who cares if Pete Hegseth can even do a pull-up at this point? He's not the one we're actually like sending to the war.
Although I
don't know if they actually clarified that in the article. I imagine not because it's The Atlantic and they're trash. Yeah. But yeah, it's just so sad and
Tony,
embarrassing.
you're chomping at the bit here.
And when you point one finger, there's 3 pointing back at you, Atlantic. Just saying.
I'm going to give a couple of things here. First, your point, Carl, is well taken. Pete Hegseth can do one and Lloyd Austin can't. And it's not because of his weight or his health or his physical fitness. It's because he goes AWOL. You can't find him to actually do the pull-up. But if we want to talk about the things that matter, look at all the people they're working out here with. Here are the numbers. You've got the U.S. Army. They are at 101% of their recruiting goals in 2025. The Navy, 108% of its recruiting goals.
By mid-year. By mid-year.
100%. This is the story, man. That this military is working because Pete Hegseth has put these kinds of rules and feelings into our soldiers.
Yes. Okay. Speaking of winners, I got to talk about losers here. Former CNN host Don Lemon, if you remember who that is, says that the Trump supporters are the closest thing we've seen to Nazis. Kay, roll this.
MAGA is the closest thing to the modern version of the Nazi Party. This is America's version. It's the closest thing without the Holocaust and all that stuff.
A sec. Okay, but wait, fact check, he did storm a church. That's right, not to mention Democrats are the ones being taken over by socialists, those who rely on government to provide a livelihood for citizens, redistribution of profits from industries, the expansion of the welfare system, nationalized education programs, and I'm trying to think who else did. Oh, Hitler did that to get elected in like 5 different countries.
Yeah, mass importation of illegal immigrants. That's Stalin 101. That was his absolute party trick. Let's see what else they do. Let people die on the sidewalks, literally turning their cities into open-air prison camps, turning their cities into these just absolute rot fests of human decay. That is what Democrats have done to America. And this guy, talk about failed journalists, this guy sits there and is like in his little chair and he's leaning back and he's like, oh, well, you know, they're just like Nazis. What are pretentious words I can't use on national television in prime time.
Yeah.
He just repeatedly disgusting. That's Don Lemon, cultivating lies, propaganda all day. It's his party trick.
You know, speaking of the Nazi-like rhetoric, Barack Obama is out doing whatever Barack Obama is doing after his stupid library opened up. And he says that Vice President J.D. Vance linking him to Nazi-like rhetoric for, get this, roll it.
When you have the vice president, the current vice president making a speech that is basically a blood and soil version of We the People, that, you know, it matters who your parents were and how long they've been here, despite him being married to an immigrant, daughter of an immigrant himself.
What?
There's a lot to unpack. First, it's the Obama Presidential Center, not library, because if it was a library, it would have some kind of oversight from the National Archives, and the last thing Barack Obama wants is any level of oversight.
And it would have a book in it, and libs don't read.
And also poorly designed. It's an ugly eyesore of a building. I'd rather watch Rosie O'Donnell dance. But the bigger story here is that if we're going to discuss parties that are captured, because that's one of the things he said, the top progressive influencer right now was just seen on video dressed like Mao Zedong.
Yes.
So if we're going to discuss the idea of captured, if we're going to discuss the idea of how these parties are acting and reacting, he has to look at himself. Now, we can argue that America should be the idea, not the land. I happen to be one of these people. The idea that he married somebody who didn't look like him should be celebrated by Barack Obama, but now it's unvirtuous. The man's happy. They just had a baby, Mazel Tov, J.D. Vance and Usha Vance. Well done, more well done by Usha. But this is just the ugly talk, and it continues because anything to degrade and deny is what they're best at.
100%. Tony K, one of the best here. Thank you.
See you guys.
All right, coming up, the difference between conservatives and liberals isn't just party affiliation. It's actually about your priorities, honestly, and we're going to find out how many worlds apart they are. I'm going to break that down by the numbers next.
30 countries, 35,000 personnel, one objective. Newsmax takes you onto the USS Theodore Roosevelt for an exclusive look at rim pack exercises, preparing for Pacific threats. Watch Wake Up America tomorrow, 7 a.m.
Kevin Sorbo here, and I have an important message to share. The government needs more money, your money. If you owe the IRS back taxes, they can garnish your wages and levy your bank accounts. They can even seize your retirement or take your home. Don't let the IRS target you. Call the professionals at Tax Network USA. Their tax lawyers and enrolled agents are experts in powerful programs that may even help you eliminate your tax debt.
Call for a free consultation or visit tnusa.com.
If your flow doesn't go like it used to, if it's P o'clock again, it could be an enlarged prostate blocking the way. The UroLift system is a minimally invasive, non-destructive treatment for men 45 and over that simply lifts the problem out of the way. Ask your urologist about the UroLift system. Most common side effects are temporary and can include discomfort when urinating, urgency, inability to control the urge, pelvic pain, and some blood in the urine. Rare side effects, including bleeding and infection, may lead to a serious outcome and may require intervention. The UroLift system for rapid symptom relief.
Clients who rolled over their IRAs 2 or 3 years ago have doubled and tripled their retirement accounts. Billionaire Eric Sprott disclosed he has invested 98% of his $3 billion fortune into gold and silver and said gold's going to $10,000 an ounce. Vanguard and Goldman warned of a lost decade ahead for stocks. Gold's role isn't to make you rich, it's to help you survive what's coming. Aren't these supposed to be your golden years? Call Patriot Gold Group at 1-800-778-4156. Patriot Gold Group is Consumer Affairs' top-rated gold and silver dealer nationwide, home of the America 250 no-fee for life IRA. Call now and see how easy it is to protect your IRA with physical gold and silver. Call now, 1-800-778-4156.
I'm Yalmer Heinrich. I'm in the nutritional business, primarily selling plant-derived minerals. The world is sick due to a lack of minerals in our food, which is caused by a lack of minerals in topsoil. There is an incredible and proven nutritional product on the market that can overcome this problem. It's Immuno 150. Now, Immuno 150 is different, it's real, it's powerful, it's helped thousands. Now, don't hesitate any longer. Place your order for what may be the best food supplement in the world.
Today's AI capabilities can make your head spin, but for scammers, it's the ultimate tool. They're using AI to exploit tech gaps and slip past traditional security. PCmatic keeps your information private and devices safe with online security solutions developed in America to protect Americans. Built for homes, businesses, and government agencies. Secure 5 devices for just $50 for your first year. Get online protection at PCmatic.com.
You ever wonder why conservatives and libs have different views? Here's why. Let me show this. A while ago, I was talking to my buddy Lincoln, okay? We had one of the most profound, questions that reshape basically the way I view the entire political battlefield. Now, he asked me, what is the definition of America to each side? And I was like, yeah, actually, there really is no common definition of American success for both sides. Like, what is the definition of success of America? So political parties nowadays, they're just a facade. There are only 2 directions of America. There's more government and less freedom, or less government and more freedom. That's all. Democrats want government in charge of absolutely everything, but some conservatives occasionally vote for crazy stuff too, like the FISA courts and the Patriot Act. This is why I always talk about the definition of America. And depending on who you talk to, the priorities are totally different. Let me show you this chart real quick here. Okay, the NIH published a study asking a simple question. Do clashes between ideologies reflect policy differences or something more fundamental? And the study found, you bet they do. Here's a look at this, okay? Look, and these are the circles. So like, this is self, this is, family. As like the center, the closer you get to the center, the more you care about self and family and core values. And the further you get out, more you care about things that you have absolutely no effect on. So people who leaned more conservative were found to prioritize self and family right here, okay? Then community, then, others, and they're at the very bottom of the conservative priority list, like random people in lands that we've never met and don't share our values. If this makes sense to you, then congratulations, you're conservative and sane. But the liberal model showed the complete opposite of the heat chart. This is where their priorities are, way out here. They primarily care about the hypothetical, like the one-legged trans-Somalian in Africa that maybe stepped on a 40-year-old landmine left over from a civil war that they have never met, never will meet, and actually will never be able to do anything about no matter what. They care more about that than they do about themselves and their family. See, conservatives understand that you can't care for your family or your community or even others if you yourself are not in top shape. Okay, this was best encapsulated by this article in Vice 10 years ago, saying, quote, gym bros are more likely to be right-wing a-holes. Science confirms. Right, okay, so it said, new research from Brunel University finds that physically strong men who regularly go to the gym are more likely to be right-wing and support social and economic inequality than weaker men. This perfectly makes sense on this point. Stereotypical conservative to a liberalist, strong with the goal to be able to physically take care of their family. Yes, that's how I feel. But the average lib, the noodle arm pounding the keyboard about stuff that doesn't matter, that's them. Your fitness, in my view, is your resume of self-respect and dedication, which you cannot lie on, which apparently, according to Vice, is uniquely right-wing and makes you an a-hole. But the lens that this was written through shows me that the authors, or the author or whatever, it was listed by, look at it, here's who wrote it, broadly staff, hiding behind anonymity of a general publication rather than somebody specifically putting their name to it, total lib move, shows that it was a weak lib who's afraid of confrontation for having a view that they profess. But to their point, it's not that right-wing men support inequality. No, it's that right-wing people are more interested in caring for people who might reciprocate that care, like a family or a community, and not some random person who had more than likely chosen to exist in their current economic status that maybe we don't even know. Like this person running for Congress on the left.
My name is Dina Nina, and I'm running for the state assembly to be Republicans' worst nightmare. A transgender woman who lives in poverty wants to legalize weed and thinks everybody deserves affordable housing and health care.
Okay, a lot to unpack there, but so you're a mentally ill person, you're overweight, living in poverty, and your primary issue is not those things, but rather legalizing weed? Again, perfect encapsulation about what the study showed. You can run for Congress, which, by the way, I did in 2014. It's not an easy thing to do. But she can't, I don't know what the heck that thing is, can't figure out their own gender, apparently, can't even get on a treadmill, can't get a job. See, the point here, and actually this is often drawn along gender lines, to however uncomfortable it makes some women to talk about, libs with an overwhelming majority of women voting left, also, who are notably weak and defenseless, that complained about safety in New York as their number one issue in the last election. Those people in droves voted for this guy, voted for Ma'am Danny, after he said he was literally going to take your private property and then empty prisons onto the street. Because of suicidal empathy among the left and 70+% of women, they voted for this dirtbag over the well-being of, they wanted the well-being of some poor prisoner who needs to get let out of jail from a, criminal justice system that exploits them. They voted for that over their own safety. That's not noble. That's stupid and suicidal. This is why the stereotype of the person at the Save Darfur rally or the Queers for Palestine or women holding up the pro-abortion sign is weak and overweight and generally works for the government, which is not a competitive job. But Navy SEALs are strong, fit, and 99% conservative. But also, you can't reason with that because the priorities are dramatically opposed. You want to save Darfur, and I want to protect my children. You aborted all your children. And to be honest, it's never going to change until those people experience real consequences. Even the person who watches the repeat offender toss someone onto a train track right in front of them, they're not going to learn that lesson because it didn't happen to them. And the people who would be in a position to learn from that is dead. Like the American woman living in Ireland, dating a Muslim migrant who, she's great, and then he killed her. We're politically divided by the reality on the conservative side and the ideological fantasy on the left, and it's not getting any closer. Anyway, before we go, the ballpark, the hot dogs, peanuts, and smacks to the back of the head. Got that next.
The press won't report the real story.
The American people are actually very smart.
Ridiculous statements.
These guys are just plain weird.
Actual scandals.
Even the immunity decision. I mean, that decision was so misreported.
That's my job, and I aim to do it every night.
Don't kibble your dog.
Hey, Dr. Marty.
Hey, back.
What's wrong with this?
Let's check it out. It's still kibble, which means they're ultra-processed. At Dr. Marty, we freeze-dried premium meats, fruits, and vegetables, and it's available at your local pet store.
As history's preeminent expert on emergency communication, I fully endorse Rapid Radios. They are the only nationwide license-free push-to-talk walkie-talkies without any monthly fees. That's right, you get access to most carriers' networks without a contract. With Rapid Radios, you can communicate instantly from this Washington to that one. Isn't that right, George?
Darn straight. And I don't lie. That's my thing.
Now I know what you're thinking. I don't need no fancy highfalutin walkie-talkie. I've got a cell phone. Cell phones are notoriously unreliable during emergencies and when you're in the middle of nowhere. Plus, Rapid Radios are great for remote adventures, emergency preparedness, and workplace communications, and for keeping in touch with your loved ones.
Hey, Pa. Over.
You make me so proud, son. Over. Get your family connected with Rapid Radios today.
Go to rapidradios.com and get up to 60% off today. Plus, free shipping. Rapid Radios. The best way to stay connected.
Get in, loser. We're going shopping.
On the glass of Sunday morning of last.
Yummy.
Indulging in myself.
As if.
Fantastic.
That's what I've been saying.
I got sand in my butt. I can't hardly walk.
You steal my sunshine.
Satellite internet that's fast, reliable, and installed by professionals. For work, for play, for every day. Available anywhere you call home. Visit Viasat.com/internet now or call 833-8Viasat to sign up today.
Healthy aging support starts here with the innovative nitric oxide science pioneered by Human, supporting your body from the heart out through circulation, blood flow, blood pressure, and energy. Results you can feel, science you can trust. Get started today at human.com.
Why go on Roe? Because 1 in 4 guys experience ED.
Guys, connect with a provider to find treatment that could be right for you, like fast-acting dissolvables or daily gummies. If 1 in 4 guys deal with ED,
then 1 in 4 guys should go on Roe.
Hi, I'm Mike Hammond with Signal Relief. If your back bothers you day after day, you know it doesn't just affect your back. It changes how you stand, walk, sleep, and how you feel about yourself. Maybe you smile through the grandkids' game, the grocery store, the yard work, or the family trip, quietly counting the minutes until you must sit down, or maybe you just miss those moments altogether. I know how frustrating it is when your body starts making decisions for you. And that's why I'm proud to introduce Signal Core, our new back support system built specifically for everyday backaches. More technology means more relief, and Signal Core has twice the technology as the original patch. And it comes with our money-back guarantee. It's targeted drug-free back support that you can wear through the day. Try Signal Core today by going to signalrelief.com and order your Signal Core.
I love going to baseball games, and before an umpire yells, play ball, like our national anthem is played like clockwork. And before that, you stand up and you remove your cap, you salute, or you put your hand on your heart. And if you don't, well, this might happen and probably should. We need more of this in our nation? Probably. Will this guy get in trouble? Definitely. But good on him for demanding respect for the flag that rightly deserves it. As I said, look, here at Newsmax, we don't condone violence. If we ever did get this dude, on air, it might be cool, Rob.
I don't condone violence. I condone a slap to the back of the head, though, if you're not standing for the anthem. I don't mind that.
Yeah.
I thought for a second it was his dad, but he's 2 rows back. I don't think, and the kid just gets up and
good.
it just
good
adheres to it, which is something. Yeah. Carl, good to see you.
Sweet.
Information. Truth is freedom. Is Newsmax. It's real news for real people.